Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're joining us for the first time, just imagine a space designed specifically for your curiosity. A place where the vibe is significantly more chilled out than the rest of your day, and where the pressure to perform is just set to zero. We take a stack of sources, articles, research, sometimes heavy philosophical texts, and we distill them down to the gold.
Yeah, we find the signal in the noise. That's the goal, really. Low-stress learning.
Exactly.
We do the heavy lifting, the reading, the analyzing.
Yeah.
So you can just sit back. Maybe you're commuting right now. Maybe you're walking the dog, and you can just absorb the insights.
And today, we are leaning all the way into that chill atmosphere because the material we're covering is, well, it's mind-bending, but it's also weirdly practical.
Very practical.
We're diving back into the Seth Material.
Always a favorite. It's dense, it's complex, but it's incredibly rewarding to unpack.
It really is. Specifically, we're looking at session 325 of the Early Sessions, Book 7. But before we get into the metaphysics of it all, we have to get the housekeeping out of the way.
Right, the legalities.
Yeah. We need to be clear that this podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We aren't selling a cure here. We're exploring historical and philosophical material.
Exactly. And just for some context, the date of record here is March 13th, 1967.
1967. So the summer of love is just around the corner. The Beatles are probably in the studio right now doing Sgt. Pepper.
It definitely creates a specific atmosphere. And the context inside the session itself is pretty interesting, too.
Oh, yeah, because of the missed session?
Right. The previous scheduled session, which would have been March 8th, wasn't held. So there's this feeling in the text of getting back to business. Seth, the personality speaking through Jane Roberts, is sort of rolling up his sleeves, metaphorically speaking, obviously, and saying, okay, we have things to fix.
And the things to fix are relatable to literally everyone listening. The mission of this deep dive is to explore Seth's advice on healing, specifically the power of attention. We're going to talk about why staring at a problem makes it worse, how to use the energy of springtime like a literal battery, and this is my absolute favorite part, why what you wear to go dancing might actually be ruining your back.
That is a very specific, very fascinating detail we will definitely get to. And I want to be clear, we aren't just going to laugh about the clothes. We're going to look at the psychology of enclosed cognition and why that advice actually holds up to modern scrutiny.
I just want to tease that right now for everyone listening. We are going to talk about why you definitely shouldn't wear your Aunt Ida's clothes if she has a bad back.
It sounds like a complete joke, but the psychology behind it is profound.
So settle in. We're acknowledging the New Awareness Network as the publisher of this incredible material. If you want to follow along or get the books yourself, you can find them at sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions or just sethcenter.com and look around.
Highly recommend picking up the physical books.
Absolutely. But for now, let's dive in.
Let's do it. So let's unpack the first big concept. Seth opens this session with an argument about lingering symptoms.
Yeah, I think anyone who has ever had a cold that just wouldn't go away or a nagging injury knows exactly this feeling.
You aren't sick anymore, really, but you aren't better either.
You're in this gray zone.
Exactly. And Seth calls this the pink elephant problem, or at least that's how modern psychologists might frame what he's describing. The quote that anchors this entire section is, and this is verbatim, when you concentrate on a symptom, you reinforce it.
When you concentrate on a symptom, you reinforce it. It sounds simple, but let's be honest. It goes against everything we are biologically wired to do, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%.
When I hurt, my brain immediately goes, look at the hurt. Monitor the hurt. Is the hurt still there? It's an alarm system.
That's the biological imperative. Pain is an alarm bell. It demands attention because historically, if you broke your leg in the wild, you needed to know about it so you didn't run on it and, get eaten by a tiger.
Sure.
But Seth is arguing that once the critical phase of an illness is over, that alarm bell is actually malfunctioning. He says these lingering symptoms are residue acting on habit patterns.
Residue acting on habit patterns? That's a dense phrase. Can we break that down a bit? What does residue mean in a neurological sense?
Think of it like a muddy road. If you drive a heavy truck down a muddy road every day for a week, that's the illness. The truck is the virus of the injury. You carve these deep ruts into the mud.
Okay, I'm picturing that.
Now, the truck is gone. The illness is cured. But the ruts, the residue, they're still there.
So the physical structure remains even though the event is over.
Precisely. Your nervous system has learned a pattern. It says, I have a sore throat or I have a stiff back. The neurons have fired together so many times that they are now wired together. So even without a biological cause, The signal keeps firing because it's just the path of least resistance.
So by checking on it, by waking up and effectively asking your body, hey, does my back still hurt today? You are essentially steering the car back into those ruts.
You are redigging the groove. You're validating the habit. Seth says, I am not suggesting that you pretend the symptom does not exist. That's a crucial distinction.
Yeah, this isn't toxic positivity or denial.
No, not at all. It's not about standing in a burning room and saying, it's actually quite chilly in here. That's delusion.
Right, if I have a broken arm, I can't just think it away instantly and go play tennis.
Correct. But Seth's method is active, not passive. He says you must quite deliberately give yourself constructive suggestion and turn your attention immediately away quickly to other matters.
It's the immediately part that gets me. It's a hard pivot.
It is a hard pivot. And this is where we get into the concept of feedback loops. Your brain has a filter called the reticular activating system, or RAS. Its job is to filter out the millions of bits of data you see every single second and only show you what's actually important to you.
Like when you buy a red car and suddenly you see red cars everywhere on the highway.
Exactly. You told your RAS, red cars are important now. So it highlights them. Now apply that to pain. If you wake up and your very first thought is, I wonder if my back hurts, you have just told your RAS that back pain is important. Find it for me.
And the brain is just an obedient servant. It will scan the body, find the tiniest bit of tension, and amplify it to a 10 just to say, here you go, I found the pain you asked for.
That is exactly the mechanism Seth is warning against. He says, to concentrate upon a hand, for example, to see whether or not a suggestion has taken hold, is hardly beneficial.
That is so human, though. Okay, I told my hand to stop hurting. Let me wiggle it. Ouch. Well, it didn't work. And Seth is saying that the act of wiggling it to check is the actual failure point.
Right, because the test implies doubt. But more importantly, the test requires you to focus on the symptom. You're looking for the pain to see if it's gone. But by looking for it, you're literally feeding the neural pathway that creates it.
So if I can't check, what do I do? How do I even know if I'm getting better?
You don't know by checking. You know by living. You have to assume the wellness. Seth says you give the suggestion, I am healthy, I am vital. And then you engage your brain in something else entirely. You have to jam the frequency.
Jam the frequency, I like that.
If the pain signal is a radio station playing a sad song, you can't turn it off by listening really hard to see if it's still playing. You have to blast a completely different station. You have to engage in a task writing, cooking, a really intense conversation so deeply that the pain station just gets drowned out.
It reminds me of when you're really engrossed in a movie or a video game and you forget you have a headache. The headache didn't physically disappear in that moment, but your consciousness went somewhere else.
The operator at the switchboard of your mind was too busy to take the call from the headache. And if you do that long enough, the headache stops calling. That is how you heal the residue. You starve the habit of attention.
I really love that image. We are the operators at the switchboard. So let's move to the next layer of this. Because to jam that frequency, to really blast that other radio station, you need power, you need energy. And Seth talks about Ruburt, which is Jane Roberts, having freed up a lot of energy.
Yes. This is a fascinating inversion of how we usually think about sickness.
Right.
Usually, we think being sick means you have low energy, you're drained, I'm too tired to do anything.
Right, it's an energy deficit.
But Seth says the opposite is happening here. He says that as Jane started to recover, her system generated more vitality.
But here's the trap. Energy is neutral. It's just fuel. It's like electricity. You can use electricity to run a heater, or you can use it to run a freezer.
The energy doesn't care.
The energy doesn't care at all. So if that fresh energy isn't used for constructive activity, if you don't turn on the heater, the body will use it to power the freezer. It will use the energy to reinforce the old habit of sickness.
That is wild. So having more energy can actually make your symptoms worse if you don't give that energy a specific job. Exactly. Imagine you have a high-performance sports car. You fill it with premium gas. If you don't drive it, that energy has to go somewhere. Maybe the engine just overheats while it's idling in the garage. Seth says additional energy is usually available to him during spring season, and it must be used to facilitate a complete cure.
The springtime prescription, I love that we are recording this deep dive with that in mind. There is a seasonal tailwind here.
There really is. Biologically, we know this too. Circadian rhythms shift, we have longer days, more vitamin D, but Seth views it as an influx of raw creative power. He says this energy must be used, it's not optional, It's almost a metabolic imperative.
And the prescription for how to use it is, well, it's surprisingly fun. I feel like most doctors don't write prescriptions quite like this.
No, usually it's just rest and drink clear fluids. Seth's prescription is poetry, writing, projection attempts which involves out-of-body or dream work, and peaceful enjoyment and pleasant social engagements.
The cure is in the fun. That's what I literally wrote down in my notes.
It really is. He notes that Jane's enthusiasm for her work is returning, and he calls that automatically beneficial. Let's look at the word enthusiasm for a second. The root is entheos, in God, or possessed by a god. It's a state of high flow.
When you are enthusiastic, you're projected outward. You are engaging with the world. When you're symptomatic, you are retracted inward, obsessing over the physical self.
Precisely. So by writing poetry or going to a party, you aren't just ignoring the illness, you are starving it. You are taking the fuel supply, that energy we talked about, and putting it into the life bucket instead of the sickness bucket. You are literally reallocating your internal resources.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here. When you're feeling crummy, writing poetry or going to a party feels like the absolute last thing you want to do. It feels like forced labor.
It feels like resistance. And that's the main hurdle. The residue wants you to stay on the couch. The habit wants you to stay small. Breaking that inertia requires a spark. That's why Seth emphasizes the spring energy. Use the natural momentum of the season to push you over that hump.
Okay, so we have the pink elephant problem. Don't think about the symptom. We have the springtime prescription, use your energy for fun, creative things. But now we get into the psychology of why we sometimes don't have fun. And this is where Seth gets like a therapist who just sees right through your excuses.
Oh, absolutely. He deconstructs a very specific weekend Jane had.
Yeah, he talks about a weekend where Jane and her husband Rob didn't host guests or go out, and Jane felt super guilty about it.
Right. And most of us would think, well, if you're sick, you should stay home, rest up. But Seth analyzes the motive. He says Jane felt guilty not just because she canceled on people, but because she did not want to face people she knew.
Oof. That hits close to home. It wasn't about the physical limitation at all. It was about social anxiety or maybe shame about being unwell.
He says going out was then an escape rather than a pursuit of pleasure.
Let's pause on that. Escape versus pursuit of pleasure. That is a massive distinction. Can you explain the difference in terms of this focus concept we've been talking about?
It is the fundamental difference between running away from something and running towards something. Seth is saying that if you go out to a party just because you want to escape your apartment and your symptoms, you're actually still focused on the symptoms.
The symptom is still the driving force. You're constantly looking over your shoulder at the ghost you're running from.
Exactly. The motivation is fear. I need to get away from this pain. That's a low vibration. It reinforces the reality of the pain in your psyche.
Whereas pursuit of pleasure is... what does that look like?
Pursuit of pleasure is, I want to go see my friends because I love them, and we're going to have a laugh and eat good food. The action is exactly the same. You're walking out the door. But the energy behind it is entirely opposite. One reinforces the sickness because you are acting out of desperation, and the other reinforces health because you're acting out of joy.
It's subtle, but it changes the entire chemical makeup of the experience.
Completely. And Seth suggests that sometimes the environment itself is the trap. He suggests leaving the apartment simply because the apartment triggers recognition of the symptoms.
I feel this deeply. If you've spent a solid week on the couch feeling miserable, the couch itself starts to feel like an accomplice to the illness.
It anchors the state of mind. We call this environmental anchoring in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. You look at the wall and your brain remembers, oh, right, this is where I stare when I have a migraine. The environment cues the biological response.
So the advice is just leave, go somewhere else, reset the sensory input.
Go to a hotel for a night, go for a long drive, change the stage set, and you might find the script changes too.
And then we get to the Friday fish story. This is so funny to me because it shows how specific habits can get really twisted over time.
It's a great example of how a virtue can become a stressor. Seth mentions an old Catholic connection regarding not eating meat on Fridays. Now, Jane and Rob weren't practicing Catholics in a strict sense at this point in their lives, but the habit lingered.
The residue strikes again.
The residue of a religious rule. Seth points out that this habit had turned into a difficulty in buying groceries, and that eating fish became an act of denial.
It became a chore. It became, I can't have what I want. I must have this thing I don't really want.
Right. It wasn't a spiritual act of devotion anymore. It was just a restriction. And restriction tightens you up. It reinforces that symptom mindset of limitation. Seth encourages spontaneity on Fridays. He's basically saying, eat the steak if you want the steak. Break the rule.
Be spontaneous. Stop living by these arbitrary rules that just make you feel small and restricted.
Spontaneity is a signal of health. Illness is rigid. Health is flexible. If you want to heal, practice flexibility.
Okay, speaking of rigid, we have to talk about the wardrobe advice.
Oh, yes. The wardrobe malfunction.
This is my absolute favorite part of the entire session. And I know it sounds kind of funny, but I want to really dig into this because I think it's profound. Seth is giving advice on how to use dancing as therapy, which is great advice. Move the body, feel the music. But then he drops this incredibly specific warning.
I do not recommend Ida's clothing.
I do not recommend Ida's clothing.
He says it twice. He really wants to drive this point home.
And the reason he gives is for she has back difficulties, and these were known to you.
Aunt Ida, Rob's brother Bill's wife.
So Jane apparently had some hand-me-downs or borrowed clothes from Ida, and Seth is saying, do not wear the bad back clothes to go dancing.
It sounds totally superstitious, right? Like a cursed object in a fairy tale?
It does, the cardigan of lumbar pain.
Exactly. But let's look at this through the lens of modern psychology. There is a concept called enclothed cognition. Have you heard of this?
I actually have not.
Okay, so researchers found that if you give people a white coat and tell them it's a doctor's coat, their attention span increases. They actually perform better on cognitive tests. But if you give them the exact same coat and tell them it's a painter's smock, they don't get the boost.
No way. So it's not the coat itself, it's what the coat means to the person wearing it.
Exactly. The clothes we wear deeply affect how we think and how we feel. It's like method acting for real life. When you put on a costume, you subconsciously adopt the traits associated with that costume.
So, if Jane puts on Ida's dress...
And Jane knows, that's the key part. Seth says these were known to you. Jane knows that Ida has a bad back. So what happens? Subconsciously, Jane adopts Ida's posture. She moves tentatively. She protects her spine. She steps into the identity of the sick woman.
That's actually kind of terrifying, but also super empowering. Because the flip side has to be true. Seth says it would help if he wore clothes that he has worn in the past when he danced well.
Exactly. Wear your power suit. Wear the dress you wore the night you felt invincible. Your body remembers how it felt in that specific fabric. It triggers the muscle memory of health and vitality.
That is such an actionable tip for our listeners. I want everyone right now to mentally scan their closet. Do you have a depression hoodie? Do you break up sweatpants?
Throw them out. Or at least do not wear them when you're actively trying to change your state. If you are feeling low and you put on the clothes you only wear when you are low, you are sealing the deal. You are telling your body, yes, this is exactly who we are today.
Burn them. Well, maybe don't burn them, but definitely wash them with some very optimistic detergent or something.
It raises a really interesting point about how we curate our reality with these physical props. We think clothes are just fabric, but they are talismans. They hold memory.
I'm never looking at my laundry the same way again, I can tell you that.
Good. You shouldn't.
So we've covered the patient side of things, Jane or Ruburt. But Seth also has some very pointed advice for the support system. In this case, Rob, or Joseph, as Seth calls him.
This is crucial for anyone listening who is caring for someone or even just has a partner or friend who is going through a rough patch physically or mentally.
The no pity rule.
It sounds harsh at first, doesn't it? Your attitude should not involve pity.
It does sound harsh. We're taught from a young age that pity is kindness. Oh, you poor thing. Let me help you.
But look at the actual vibration of pity. When you pity someone, you are looking down at them. You are seeing them as a victim. You are agreeing with the illness. You're essentially saying, yes, you are weak and I am sorry for you.
Wow. When you put it that way, pity is basically a full endorsement of the problem.
It completely validates the symptom. It solidifies their identity as the sick person. Seth says the attitude should instead involve a confident assurance.
Confident assurance. That feels way different. That feels like, I know this sucks right now, but I also know you're strong and this is temporary.
Exactly. It's holding the vision of health for the other person when they can't hold it for themselves. If both of you fall into the hole of, oh, this is terrible, who's going to pull you out?
That's a really great point. Someone has to stay on solid ground.
Seth gives very tactical advice here, too. He says to praise Jane when she improves, but and I love this little parenthetical in the original note smile, without, of course, overdoing it.
Don't be patronizing. Good job lifting that coffee cup, honey.
Right. Don't make it weird. But reinforce the wins naturally. And when symptoms occur, he says, do not comment over much.
This is the discipline part. When your partner complains, the instinct is to dive in and dissect it. Where does it hurt? Is it worse than yesterday? Did you take your pill?
And Seth says, stop. Do not ignore them because that's just cold. But don't let your comments become negative suggestions. Don't amplify the pain by spotlighting it.
So what should you say instead?
Seth suggests comfort that is strictly constructive. Phrases like, you will feel better soon. It acknowledges the present pain, but points the arrow firmly toward the future healing.
You will feel better soon. It's a command and a comfort wrapped in one.
And he tells Rob to use ingenuity to divert Jane's attention.
Distraction again. It always comes back to distraction.
Yes. If she's in pain, don't ask about the pain. Tell a joke. Start a debate about a movie. Turn on a record. Change the subject. Break the trance of suffering.
It's active management of the shared reality. It's fascinating how much responsibility Seth places on the partner here. Not to, quote-unquote, heal the person, but to curate the environment so healing is easier for them to achieve.
We influence each other constantly. Our moods, our words, our focus. We are feedback loops for the people we live with. Seth is just saying, be a positive feedback loop. Don't mirror the sickness.
I love that. Okay, we're coming into the final segment of the session, and this is where we go to night school.
The Twilight Zone.
Seth talks about projecting, and he's suggesting that Rob and Jane use their sleep time for actual work.
It makes total sense if you accept the premise that we are multidimensional beings. We spend a third of our lives asleep. Seth argues that this isn't just off time. It's time when the ego, the part of you that worries about bills and back pain, is out of the way, and we can do serious inner work.
He encourages Rob to try projection attempts, basically astral projection, during the dream state. Why? Because it utilizes time not available in waking existence.
And it provides a sense of freedom. Think about it. If your waking life is super stressed, or your partner is sick, or you have a job you hate, the waking world feels heavy. Gravity is heavy. In the dream state, you can fly. You can literally walk through walls.
That sense of freedom must be incredibly restorative.
It expands the personality. It reminds you that you are not just a meat suit stuck in an apartment in 1967. You are consciousness. That perspective shift alone is profoundly healing. It breaks the claustrophobia of the illness.
But the problem with dreams is, well, for me at least, I forget them 5 seconds after I wake up. I know I did something super cool, and then poof, it's totally gone.
We all do that. And Seth has a very specific hack for this.
The practical tip.
He says, it is quite beneficial to suggest you will awake at once afterward to write the experience down.
Awake at once, not in the morning when the alarm goes off.
That's the key. If you have a profound experience and then you just fall back into a regular sleep cycle, the data gets overwritten by standard dreaming. The grocery lists, the anxieties, the random nonsense.
It just gets buried in the static.
Right. Seth says waking up immediately helps to isolate it from other dream experience. You capture the raw data before your waking brain has a chance to scramble it.
It requires a lot of discipline, though, waking up at 3 a.m. to scribble in a notebook on your nightstand.
Seth acknowledges that. He says you have sleep to consider, of course.
Yeah.
But this method is the best one of all. It's a trade-off. Do you want the insight, or do you want the extra hour of snooze?
And then there's a promise, a really cool promise that wraps up this whole idea of connection.
This part gave me chills when I first read it.
Me too.
Seth says, I will make myself better known to you when you are ready for me to do so. And he tells them to suggest that they will see him in a dream projection.
I will tell you that I am, so you will know me.
I will tell you that I am I. It's such a simple, cryptic, yet incredibly powerful statement. It implies that there is a connection available in that state that is clearer than what they get through the Ouija board or the trance sessions.
It's a direct encounter, no filter.
Exactly, and it reinforces the idea that we aren't alone in this. We have guides or inner selves or whatever you want to call them, waiting for us to just pay attention.
But you have to be ready. That's the catch.
Always. You can't force the door open. You have to unlock it from your side. You have to manage your fear, manage your focus, and consciously open the channel.
So let's zoom out a bit. What does this all mean for the listener driving to work right now? We've covered a lot of ground in session 325.
We really have. If I had to synthesize it, I'd say it's all about the management of focus.
Management of focus. I like that.
Your health, your reality, your entire experience is determined by where you point the camera of your mind.
Point 1, don't stare at the pink elephant.
Right. Don't obsess over the symptom. The more you check it, the more you solidify it. Acknowledge it, give a constructive command like, I am healing, and then distract yourself immediately.
Point 2, springtime is rocket fuel.
Use the natural energy of the season, or just your own returning vitality, creativity. Write the poem. Go to the party. Do the work you love. If you don't use the energy positively, it turns sour and feeds the habit of illness.
Point 3, check your motives.
Are you running away from fear, trying to escape, or running toward joy, pursuing pleasure? The physical action might look exactly the same, but the result depends entirely on the intent.
Point 4, wardrobe matters.
Do not wear Aunt Ida's clothes.
Serious life advice right there.
Be aware of the associations you carry, your clothes, your apartment, your routines. If they are anchored to being sick or being sad, change them. Be spontaneous. Buy the steak on Friday.
And point 5, be a confident assurer for the people you love.
No pity. Pity is poison. Offer confident hope. Be the distraction they desperately need.
It's a toolkit for living a higher vibration life, really. It's not just about curing a cold or a bad back. It's about curing the habit of being small.
Beautifully put.
Now, I want to leave our listeners with a provocative thought, something to really chew on after the deep dive ends.
Let's hear it.
We talked about Ida's clothes. I want to ask you, the listener, what old clothes are you wearing right now? And I don't just mean literally, though. Seriously, check your closet. I mean metaphorically. What habits, what environments, what friends are you hanging on to that are secretly keeping you stuck in an old version of yourself?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
Are you wearing the I'm a victim cardigan? Are you wearing the I'm not good enough shoes?
Exactly. Take them off, dance in something else, see what happens.
I absolutely love that.
If this deep dive sparks something in you, and I really hope it did, please do not stop here. We are just barely scratching the surface of the Seth material.
We're looking at one session out of hundreds. It is an absolute goldmine of psychological and spiritual insight.
We highly encourage you to go to the source. Visit the New Awareness Network. You can find their bookstore at sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions. Specifically, look for the early sessions. It's raw, it's unfiltered, and it's completely life-changing.
Absolutely. Support the publishers who keep this vital material in print.
And as always, thank you for lending us your ears and your curiosity today.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember, this podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We're just two friends sharing what we've learned.
Keep learning, keep questioning.
And stay chill. We'll see you in the next Deep Dive.
Goodbye.